Noknech Ponglud Josh. Good morning. This is Josh Pritchett, and welcome to Movers and Shakers Start This Week in Star Trek Discovery. I am joined today by my co-host, Chris Papillon.
Hello, everyone. Hola, amigos. Bonjour, mes amis. It's Super Bowl Saturday, and more importantly, it's the return of Star Trek Discovery.
Yes, indeed it is.
Josh,
And what a return it was.
yes, but first, Josh, who are you taking in the Super Bowl? Are you taking the Bajoran Bengals or the Romulan Rams?
I may have to go with the Romulan Rams on this one. I don't think the Prophets are gonna be there for the Bengals.
You might be right, but I'm a sucker for the underdog, so I'm going to go with the Bajoran Bengals.
Oh, okay. It's probably a good choice. So either way, I mean, the Rams do have hometown advantage on this one. So it's rarer that I think than a blue moon that the home team gets to play in its own stadium. That a team gets to play in its own home stadium on the Super Bowl. So there's a lot going on there, and of course, I'm the biggest surprise. I think everybody's like, Tom Brady's not in it this year. I think we kind of got used to that. So,
Now avocado smoothies and toast can only go so far.
yeah, that's true. That'll only get you so far in this life. So, at any rate, so we are back for the first time in 4 weeks. With the second half of season 4 of Star Trek Discovery. And so I guess we want to sort of start with our recap of the show. Following the book's theft of the new prototype spore drive, Michael is brought to the mat by the Admiral and the Federation President regarding what she knew about that. And of course, they obviously realized she knew nothing about it. It was a complete shock. So now it is Michael's mission, along with that of Starship Discovery, to track down any information they can about the 10C, the alien race behind the anomaly that has been destroying planets throughout Federation space. And ultimately, it leads Zora and finds out about, or basically backtracks the anomaly to a point just outside of our galaxy where there is a large subspace anomaly where apparently this thing came from. So in order to find out more about this region of space, Michael takes Discovery to a old contact of hers from her courier days with Book, who might know someone who has star charts of that region. And while their Book is also there trying to acquire a weapon to use to destroy the anomaly.
Yeah, so they get there and we see that it's a holographic image of it seems to be a dragon. And I thought that was a cool special effect of the show that Michael says, just guide yourself towards the mouth of the dragon, and then it's revealed it's this barge, and it's basically a floating casino, if you might, a riverboat casino for 900 years from now. And so she goes directly to Haas, who is the owner, and she is greeted by her nickname, which we find out is Red Hook, which later on in the episode we find out exactly why that's her nickname. And she once again asks for two things. One, if she can purchase the star charts of the race that lives close enough to the galactic barrier that since they were warp capable, they might have been able to take some pictures of the anomaly. And he, as a procurer of all things, says he can do that. And then she drops her want number 2, which is, I also need some isolinium. And he makes the remark that someone was already asking for that, and she asks, "Is it Book?" And he says yes. And so he says that the amount of money that will be needed to purchase that over what Book has offered is a very large amount of money. And so she's left with Orsikon and wondering, how are we going to like raise these funds? And the floating barge has basically a floating, not a floating, but it has a cage match. And so Orsikon says, well, why don't I go in there? And so she does, and she gets put down to the mat the first time, and she gets put down to the mat the second time. And, at this point, Michael's like, no, 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 you don't need to do this. And she's like, no, no, I can do this. I can do this. And it gets to a point where the odds against her are like 40-1. And so Michael basically has like no more credits left. And okay, this is all we can afford. And in true Trek tradition, Alaskan puts the man down on the mat on her last try, and they win big. And so at that point, the narrative also switches to Tarka and to Book, who their arrangement with Haas is if they can find the person who's the cheating on his casino and taking a large amount of profits from him, they can have the Eselinium. And so Tarka, because he's a genius, figures out who it is and modifies some old equipment that Haas had given them, had shown them that he had acquired, and they figured out it's actually a changeling. And nod to Deep Space Nine, the first time we've seen a changeling in like a while, and they capture it, and then they both run up to Haas, and Haas basically says, "Well, we have a tie, and there's only one way to break a tie, which we all know these days is the equivalent of a game of Texas Hold'em." Josh, do you want to take us home with like what happens next?
Yeah. So Book and Michael have to play this game along with two people who are described as Orion Syndicate holdouts, from which we guess that obviously the Orion Syndicate is still very active in the galaxy. So it's a four-way game. They start playing the game. The two Orion Syndicate members are eliminated, and then it's just down to Michael and Book. And it becomes like this whole thing where Michael is trying to get Book to back down. Please, just throw the game and don't do this. If you do that, if you take the Isolinium, we will come after you. Starfleet will send everything, including me. I will stop you. And ultimately, Book does win the card game. But then later on, when she's being debriefed by Admiral Vance, Michael reveals that although she knew she could not beat Book in this game because he's too good at it, Michael did slip a tracking device similar to the one that they used to track the dilithium onto the Isolum, and that she and Discovery will now be able to track Book wherever they go in the galaxy. The last thing we see is we see what that part of the story is. Their starship, Book's ship seems to be standing still, so apparently he is assembling. Him and Tarka are assembling the weapon that they are going to use. And meanwhile, it's now a race. We also find out something interesting about the anomaly. Apparently, based on the size and mass of where the 10Cs seem to exist in regards to our galaxy, it's quite large. And they believe that the anomaly is essentially a kind of a big mining ship that is going and harvesting certain elements from the planets it destroys. So this might be an avenue where the Federation could negotiate with them and say, hey, we can maybe get you what you need. You don't need to destroy our planets to get this. So that, of course, like everything this season, it is to be continued after that. So that's what is kind of going on right there. Chris, was there anything I missed?
I mean, there's only the small part about the guilt that Dr. Culber is feeling for what happened with Book, and he's blaming himself, and he makes the reference back to how in his you know in his trying to help everyone, he is at this point helping no one because he can't focus enough on his patients. And um, we leave with him and Stamets going for a walk in the holodeck to try to calm him down and calm his nerves. But it's the reference of like what do physicians do when they feel that they cannot help their patients anymore. And I also thought that it's we all look at the little Roombas that clean now vacuum our floors, and I think we saw the next generation of it. Or what the ultimate result is the bots who clean the room. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I like that the robot coming in trying to clean the room, and
I could use one of those today.
Yeah, I could use one here in my room too. Actually, as a matter of fact, but the doctor being like, he just having to do something, having to feel useful. It's like, I just get out of here. Let me do this, and I'm I thought that was a really good scene. I really like that relationship between Stamets and Hugh, how they bond. So they're a wonderful couple on the show, and it I think it is it is great to see what just to give people a real look at what a real gay marriage is like, and I think it really is something really exciting there. And to see them there for each other is great. It really does speak to. I want to say one thing. Myself working in a hospital is the whole thing with Hugh being stressed and feeling like he wasn't able to help book. That does speak to something. Obviously what's going on here in the real world with doctors having to deal with not being able to save COVID patients and other people who have been having other health problems, and just being so overwhelmed. I mean, the numbers of doctors suffering burnout has been the last 2 years has been insane. And, I'm glad they sort of addressed that indirectly on the show this week. So I think that kind of covers the recap of the show for this week. So I guess we're going to move into what was awesome and not so awesome. So I want to start with one thing I thought was awesome. The Changeling. I thought he or she, well, I guess it was a she. Them. Yep. Let's just say them. Was really awesome. It was great to see a Changeling for the first time since the end of Deep Space Nine. Obviously, a lot more people, because obviously, well, as we've said before, by the 32nd century, they've reached out to all 4 quadrants of the galaxy, and there is so much going on with different species. So Book was not terribly surprised that it's a Changeling. That okay. I love the fact that it turned into a tribble and it just kind of rolled down the floor, trying to get away from them, and then they caught them, and it reverted to a humanoid form very similar to what we experienced with Odo and the female Changeling from DS9. So I thought that was really cool. Something we'll get into later is a lot of references to Deep Space Nine. Chris, what did you think was awesome?
Well, I think Discovery is at its best when Burnham is the emotional heart of the episode, and clearly she was that in this one, because he's faced with the conundrum of love versus duty, and she clearly loves Book and is hesitant to do anything to harm him, until the end is still trying to convince him to hey, don't do this. But on the other hand, her duty as a Starfleet officer compels her to realize that the man that she loves is about to start an intergalactic war. And later on in the episode, when we find out that this is the DMA is basically a piece of mining equipment, and that they are just mining them regardless of the people in the Federation, it makes you realize, holy cow, the Federation is probably like ants to them. So you really don't want to piss them off. So, he's faced with this choice. What can he do? And I think the best parts, the most awesome parts of Star Trek Discovery is when the emotional heart is her and her dilemma. And you can see how she's trying so hard. I mean, there's numerous things he could do to stop Book causing him harm. I mean, she could have ordered the ship to look for Book's vessel, and then the minute he's trying to beam aboard, blow it up. But she doesn't do that. And, it's the conflict, and you see it even at the poker table, where she's using her relationship with Book to beat out the other two Orion Syndicate bidders. But then at the end, she's trying everything she can to convince him to not do this. But Book, in his grief, just cannot see any other path. And so she has to choose. And so it's ultimately, when she puts that tracker on to the isolinium, she's made a choice, which is like, I have to move away from the love of my life because I love the Federation so much more. And so it's the classic choice that is you see in literature and in the best movies. It's love versus duty. And in this case, you can see that she wants to go the way of love, but she has to stick with duty. So now she has the device placed on the isolinium. They know where Book is. Clearly, the ship that's going to go to try and take him down is going to have to be Discovery. Why? Because they will detect any other ships coming at them at typical warp capacity, but they won't be able to detect them if they jump right next to them. So I loved that the episode centered on the emotional conflict of like, what does Burnham do? Does he do what she wants to do herself, or does he do what is best for the Federation? Which is, a choice that throughout the whole series she is faced with again and again. Even when they came to the future, the choice was like, do I stay here with my brother, with the people in the time that I know, or do I take myself far into the future just to save the Federation? So when it comes down to it, when the chips are down in the final call, it's always the Federation, even if she doesn't really want to go that route.
Yeah. It was a very hard choice for her, and I think that was one of the obvious centerpieces of the episode. This is her Kobayashi Maru. Does she give up Book or the Federation? And she, I think, chooses wisely, chooses the Federation, but it is going to hurt and is going to leave some scars. But the fact is that Book seems to be completely unaware that, there is a much bigger threat beyond the DMA that if it's destroyed, could actually destroy the entire, galaxy, the Federation, everything. So, can she still appeal to him on that level? We don't know. We will probably see next week.
I think. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to. You go ahead. You
go
ahead.
I was going to follow up with that. I think he's being hoodwinked by Tarka, because Tarka doesn't care about what happens in our universe, because his whole plan is to take the power device and move on to another universe. So he doesn't care if there's an all-out war. He probably knows that the species powerful enough to build that is powerful enough to destroy the Federation in a fight. Doesn't care, because he just needs the energy to go on to another dimension, another universe. And so, when Book realizes this, he's probably going to be devastated. But yeah, he's being played.
Yeah, no, I think he's definitely being played, even though Tarkin did tell him, I want to capture the energy from destroying the DMA so that it can propel me to a different reality where my friend might be waiting for me, where I just want to get away from this one, a better universe, in other words, and he doesn't give a damn about this broken
Yep, absolutely does not.
universe. Hmm?
Absolutely does not.
No, he totally doesn't. Okay, so what was not so awesome for me was no DMA. We haven't seen the DMA in a few episodes, and I'm like, you know, I would have been nice if we could have had a cutaway scene where we see the DMA destroy some other planet. It doesn't have to be a major one. Just see that it's still out there. It's still wreaking havoc, and Starfleet, is still not sure what to do. So that would have been nice if we could have had a DMA appearance, because that is kind of the big villain of this season. So that's all I really got.
So, I mean, I will add one awesome and one not so awesome. I thought it was awesome, and I know you want to talk a little bit about throwbacks. The fact that they mentioned that boronite is the key element that the civilization behind the DMA is mining, because it's a call out to Star Trek Voyager and the Omega particle, because boronite is the key component for creating the Omega particle, which is so powerful that Starfleet has the order, or used to have the order 800 years ago, to destroy on sight, because it can render space travel in that area inert. So it makes sense that they would need something so powerful for that device that they have, which when they explained it, I also thought of the Next Generation, because it was like, wow, this sounds like a mega Dyson sphere, because they talk about how it's enclosed and it can enclose at least 3 planets. So I'm like, yeah, it seems like sort of the natural evolution of a Dyson sphere from covering a whole planet to like covering a whole system. So, I like those callbacks that we had onto Voyager and Deep Space. I mean, Voyager and to Next Generation. What I didn't like so much was, for those people who have seen Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, I love the scene of the cage fighting where you had different people involved. And the cage fight was interesting, but it was the same guy. And, I was like, okay, can't you find a couple of extras so we can see that, okay, it's different people fighting. And at the very least, he has to fight a couple of rounds to get to the big guy, the standing champion. So it was a little bit of a disappointment for me. I understand maybe it was a time issue, but it was like, okay, this is a big casino and you've only got like one guy, and so everyone comes up and fights like that one guy. I mean, like, I would have liked to have seen at least him fighting someone, a couple of the people, or a couple of the people fighting to get the right to fight him. So it just kind of seemed like, okay, yes, he's just going to walk up and fight this guy. I mean, like, I want a little bit of build up in my Fight Club. I mean, I want to see okay, this really is you can't just walk up and fight the big boss. I mean, like, you have to go through a couple rounds. So rather than seeing her, fail again and again, which I understand is a trick of the narrative to try to get the stakes increased. But yeah, I mean, it just seemed a little bit, that whole thing seemed a little bit flat. And the other thing that I thought was maybe not so awesome, that, because for me, Tarka is an incredibly smart guy, and I know their task was, okay, I've got to find the person who's cheating. But at the same time, I thought, if he would have thought, okay, what is the alternate plan? The alternate plan is to get more credits. So I would have liked to have seen him like at his own poker table, just beating people, because he's that much smarter. And so his backup plan could have been, well, in case we don't find the changeling, I'll win enough money that the guy will have to give us the thing. So, the use of Tarka in this episode was not as much as I wanted. I mean, we get a little bit when he's talking with Owesikon about why am I doing this? But I mean, other than that, and modifying a piece of ancient equipment to create a force field to entrap the changeling, I mean, it wasn't much use of Tarka. I mean, if you had left him on this ship and it only had Bookett come down, I don't think the episode would have suffered that much.
Yeah, no. Yeah, Tarka, he's supposed to be the big brains, but he's definitely underutilized in that. I totally agree. Just to go back, though, to the Fight Club scene, Joanne, you're right. It would have been nice if maybe instead of Joanne getting her butt kicked 2 times and then beating the guy on the 3rd time, if maybe she could have fought a couple other people. Sort of a throwback to the Deep Space Nine episode where Worf had to fight these different Jem'Hadar to buy time for Garrick to build a transmitter to reactivate the runabout to get them all out of there. That would have been kind of cool. And that way you could have had a variety of like, okay, we could have had her fight an Andorian or maybe fight a Bajoran or a Cardassian or, and, have the big guy. And I was actually surprised, they just let the guy, just this big human guy, that they didn't try to put any makeup on him, make him look like a Klingon or something, which that would have said something about Joanne. It's like, oh, she was able to kick a Klingon's butt. That's always kind of the standard there in Star Trek. But
not big enough that he couldn't fall before the right hook of Burnham. And I love that. That's how we learned why he got the nickname Right Hook.
yeah. Well, maybe Michael should have gotten in the fight. I don't know. We have certainly seen Michael that she is a great fighter, but I'm really glad that Joanne got more screen time. This is going back to what was awesome was Joanne getting more screen time, and the fact that we now know her first name, which I'm sure that was mentioned in like IMDb and stuff, but it's the first time I think we've actually heard it on the show. And she, getting to stand out, having her, having a moment in the sun here, which I felt like, a lot of these characters have been with us for 4 seasons and we don't know as much about them as we would really like. I mean, it really has felt, it's not like Deep Space Nine where, we got to know all these characters all throughout the first season and they kept growing and evolving and we got to know them more and more, which was one of the strengths of Deep Space Nine. Is like you had this giant cast by the end of season 7 that included all of the series regulars and then the recurring guest stars, and we knew who they were, their backstories, all this cool stuff. So we're still trying to learn that with Omino and the rest of the gang. So I hope we keep doing more of that. So on the note about Deep Space Nine, there's something I really wanted to talk about, and it's something I have noticed throughout this season. There have been a lot of Easter eggs that seem to tie back to DS9 that is getting me very, very excited because this week, obviously, we had the Changeling. We've had different Ferengi sort of rotating in and out. We've had the bar, both in the casino and the one on Discovery, that bear sort of a resemblance to Quarks. Obviously we've had various and of course the Federation president is part Bajoran, part Cardassian, part human. So that leads me to wonder: are we going to see or find out what happened to Deep Space Nine 700 years ago? Is it still around, or what's up? What's going on? I mean, I don't know if we're going to run into Captain Sisko or Colonel Kira, who's been cryogenically frozen or something, but maybe. What do you think, Chris?
Well, definitely the hints are being dropped, especially all throughout this season, of reminders like, hey, this is possible that we might be going back to Deep Space Nine. I mean, the talks of the wormholes earlier in the episode, as you mentioned, the Federation president clearly. So I don't think that there's anything definite, but it seems like they're dropping, hints to get people thinking and maybe to try to build up some buzz. Would there be a Deep Space Nine? Yeah, I would imagine that there's probably like a station built upon the older station, so it's something like really big now. I know that there have been rumors that they want to bring it back, but it might also just be playing on the nostalgia factor to get people to keep watching. Will there be an appearance of Deep Space Nine? Oh, I've got to watch. It also might be a bit of a distraction because they want people to be thinking about this and not thinking about something that's rather large, I think, out there, which is like, where the heck are the Klingons?
Yeah.
I know that Klingons featured heavily in the first seasons of Discovery, and so they purposely wanted to move away a bit from them. But the Klingons are such a large component of the Federation that, people are going to start asking more and more, what happened to them? Where are they now? So in order for people to not start building that up, they could also just be a bit of smoke and mirrors, making people think about, oh yeah, Deep Space Nine, Bajor, in order not to think about, like, where are the Klingons? Because even the Gorn got a mention very briefly last season, when Book says, well, the Gorn destroyed half the interstellar network, so communications are more difficult than it used to be. But curiously, nothing about the Klingons. And, we've seen Andorians so far. Obviously we've seen, like, the Navarre. But again, my big question is, like, where are the Klingons and how long can they go? I don't think we're going to see the Klingons this season. But how long can we go without seeing Klingons?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I've been asking myself that too. It's like, are we going to like have a thing at the very end of the episode where okay, we've solved the DMA problem, we've solved the 10C problem, and then the Discovery and the crew get ready to, go, black alert to their next thing, and suddenly, oh, the Klingons have shown up. Now, one idea I just had as we're talking about this, what if the Klingons have also developed the spore drive? And they pop up to say, Nook nech, Michael, that's a thought.
That's a very interesting thought, because if you remember the episodes of Star Trek Enterprise, the references made before they became a warrior culture. They were a culture of architects. They were a very advanced culture dedicated not to war. So, if you can't travel anymore to fight other races, does that mean that you revert back to what you used to be? That is a very interesting question. I don't think necessarily the warlike Klingons that we've seen before would be the warlike Klingons that we see now. But let me ask you this, Josh. Do you think they detonate the device?
Can you repeat that, Chris? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Do you think they detonate the device?
That they would detonate the device?
That Book and Tark are successful, and before Discovery can stop them, they actually do detonate the device, destroying the DMA.
Ooh, that's a scary thought. They might.
I think they will.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got 3 or 4 episodes left this season. It's very possible. And then the rest of the 10C might come in there, and one thing about Tarkum is there's 2 possibilities, I think, with him. One is he gets the energy that he wants so that he can go to his universe, or the universe he wants to go to, but it may not be what he thought it was going to be, is one thought. The other thought is it doesn't happen and he ends up going off to a Federation penal colony for the rest of his life for espionage. That's another thought. I don't know. I'm wondering if Book will have like some sort of redemption moment here this season, or if, Book has that his empathic abilities. That could he end up being the guy who talks to the 10C and convinces them to, stop what they're doing, that the Federation is willing to help them, get what they need to save their civilization. What could happen there? That's another thought. Just one more theory, though, about the Klingons, and this is just a thought. I'm wondering if the makeup team is going back to the drawing board with the design of the Klingons, and actually is going to try to make them look more like they did in the TNG era, Simply because there's all the talk that maybe Worf might still show up on Picard, or that just different things. Maybe they will come up with an explanation for why the Klingons looked vastly different from the in the Discovery, or maybe they just won't. But we certainly saw towards the end of season 2 that there were more of the TNG era Klingons popping up in the background. So that's just another thought I had there. But what else you think?
Well, I think going back to the to blow up or not to blow up, I think that they are going to successfully detonate the device, and that's going to stop the DMA in its tracks. And as anyone who has a piece of equipment working for them, when it stops, what do? They go see, oh, what happened? So that's going to be the cause for whatever is in the mega Dyson sphere, if you will, to come out and see what happened to the piece of equipment. So I think we're definitely going to see the inhabitants of that. I don't think Tark is going to be successful in destroying it all, but I think it is going to stop, and that's where they're going to come out and see what happened to our device. As for, I think I'm with you that Tarka is going to end up skipping to another universe, but it's not going to be the universe that he wanted. And I think that Book is bound for a penal colony. There's no way back after this. It might be that we see him in like 2 seasons hence, sort of like what happened with Cassidy Yates and Deep Space Nine, but there's just no way he doesn't go to penal colony for this. I mean, his fate is sealed. I think we will see Mary Wiseman again before the end of this season. At least I hope we do. She's teaching the cadets, so I think some type of circumstance will arise that will necessitate her speciality. So I think we will see her. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Dr. Culber somehow either also just transfer to Starfleet Academy, or if he takes an extended leave of absence. I think we're headed towards that right now. So we might have in the next season perhaps a new ship's counselor. I think that there's a strong possibility that we might end up with a cliffhanger this season. I hope not. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of cliffhangers, but I think that, just like we didn't know what happened when they proposed, they went to the future, I think we might have like a similar issue of like what's going to happen with who the inhabitants are of the Mega Dyson sphere. And, it could also be that we're setting up for a new mission for Discovery in the Federation, which is to explore what lies beyond the galactic barrier. I mean, there's several possibilities, but Mary Wiseman returning, I think, is one thing I'm going to call before the end of the season, and 2, that they are successful in blowing up, detonating the device. It won't completely destroy the DMA, which Tarka doesn't want to do anyway. He wants to capture the energy device, but it's definitely going to stop it, and the owners are going to come out to see like what the heck just happened.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. I think that that's a possibility for next week's episode, and that's going to set up for the remainder of the season. We did see some clips in the trailer where it did look like Admiral Vance, Michael, and the Federation president were, and also the president and VAR were all standing together and looking like they were trying to negotiate with something, or they were facing something. So we have to kind of look at that. Just touching on briefly, though, what you said about Mary Wiseman and Starfleet Academy. This week I did read an article online about a number of the shows that apparently they have they have said they have worked, that there is some talk about, at least rumors going forward, of Star Trek projects they would like to develop, including one of them is a Starfleet Academy show, which, I'm kind of dubious about, just because for the last 30 years, I've heard about one Starfleet Academy series after another, and none of them have ever materialized. The closest, I think, has obviously been Star Trek Prodigy, which I think that's a terrific show. I think that sort of checks most of the boxes for an Academy series. But if you wanted to do an Academy series, okay, Mary Wiseman is obviously your lead character on something like that. And you could have an interesting, diverse group of young people. But it would have to be something like either Prodigy or like the episode we just had a couple of episodes back where Tilly takes these cadets and they go on these away missions and have to learn how to survive in these situations, which I don't know if you could keep that up every week and keep it fresh.
So Josh, what is the ideal number of Star Trek episodes? At one point, do we want to avoid hitting saturation? Because right now we've got Star Trek Discovery, we've got Star Trek Picard, we're going to start Strange New Worlds, and we've got Lower Decks. So basically, you've got one for every
Prodigy.
Prodigy.
Yeah.
So you've got 5. We know that at some point Star Trek Discovery, is going to end. We know that at some, like, the rumor has it that we're only going to get like 3 seasons of Picard. So these could be shows that they're prepping to replace those, at least Star Trek Picard. But at what point, what is the magic number that we have too many Star Trek shows on air?
Well, that goes back to the 90s when you had Deep Space Nine and Voyager running at the same time. And you had that complaint that there's just too much Star Trek on it. It was only just 2 shows. And I mean, they were set in 2 different, points. Deep Space Nine was still in the alpha and beta quadrants, and Voyager was all the way. Well, it was also in the gamma quadrant, but Voyager was all the way out in the delta quadrant. So they didn't have that much overlap. The way Paramount Plus, it's completely different from what we used to have with network and syndicated television in the 90s. With streaming, you can watch these shows anytime, obviously. You can wait till the entire series has been on and then go back and binge watch the whole thing. And I would just, I don't know anymore. I don't know if those same rules that we had in the old days apply anymore, because Paramount obviously wants people to keep watching and not watch one show and then cancel their subscription until the next one comes on. That doesn't help them. So they want to keep people active. And so with Star Trek, it's like, okay, clearly they've got fans that want to keep that want to watch Star Trek. So they're going to make the Discovery show, and then they're going to have Picard, and they're going to have all these shows. I think they definitely want to have something ready to go after the end of Picard season 3. And I don't know how many more. The rumor is with Discovery they want to go the full 7 seasons, which would be great. I'm not really tired of Discovery at this point. There are some things I think they could do differently, but I think it's really come together now that they're in the 32nd century, and that it really can grow. So
I want to touch upon that, because I really think it's fascinating how Paramount is doing this as opposed to Marvel and Disney Plus. Because Marvel and Disney Plus, they have different shows that are airing throughout the year, but it's all more or less in the same timeline. It's on the same time period. Whereas Paramount Plus, what they decided to do is they're giving us shows in different time periods. So we're going to have Strange New Worlds, which is like, sort of this at the infancy of the Federation. Then we're going to have sort of like our current time, next generation time with Picard. And then we have the future where we have Star Trek Discovery. So it's a complete opposite of the Disney Plus strategy, a singular timeline all at the same time. This is like maybe the same timeline, but at different periods of time. So I thought that approach was fascinating when you think about the Paramount shows as opposed to the Disney Plus show. So, I wanted to highlight that because it's interesting for me that they are not following the Disney route where, they're never going to really have crossovers by doing this. But I think it's okay because it keeps us not only interested, but also we can see stuff that might happen in Star Trek New Worlds that might be referenced or be significant in Picard, or something happens in Picard that might be significant in Discovery. So I really liked that approach that they've taken. I mean, what do you think of it?
Well, the thing is with they are two different beasts in a way. I mean, with Marvel, there is a big overarching plot that ties between the movies and the streaming shows. Where it's like a big, massive comic book crossover. Where you need to watch the first story, and then you need to watch the second and third, and it's run congruently. Star Trek, it's kind of different timelines. I mean, it has a universe. It spans the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 32nd. Well, also, I guess now with Picard, because it's I believe it is set in the year 2400, getting into the 25th century. So it is, going through 4 or 5 different centuries. It can go all over the place. There's a whole lot of room there. And they're not tying in directly into a big Star Trek movie that's, going to start phase 1 or, whatever, like Marvel does. So, I think that, and also you have different writers' rooms going on. So you have different people coming up with different ideas. I don't, would it be cool though if they ever did something like that, like with Marvel? Yeah, but I don't think they could do it right now, because I think they've already got their own established parameters about, where they want to go.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I also just like the fact that, and maybe we won't find this out until the 7th season of Discovery, but the grandiose mystery is, how did Zora end up by herself with no crew in the future? I mean, I think that's the overall mystery regarding Discovery that we may not find out until the final season. But I'm very cool with that, because I think there should always be like one last mountain to scale, or one last mountain that you were not able to scale. So the mystery of why Zora ends up alone is, I think, something that's going to hang over Discovery, and maybe we'll find out slowly. But, I like that we still have that there.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think we're really, there's so much there that's going on, and that is the big thing. I think maybe that is the plan, that this isn't just season to season just reacting, that there is a point that this is leading towards. And are you going to have like a big thing like 2010, the year we make contact? For those you don't remember, that's obviously the sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And at the end of that one, the spirit of Dave returns from wherever he's been and is talking to Hal, and is taking Hal with him to the next stage, I guess. And is Michael going to come back and talk to Zora and bring her and Discovery to the next stage of where the rest of the crew is? That would be kind of a cool way to end it. That would be a very Star Trek kind of ending to Discovery right there.
Looking at the future, I also just want to make reference to, I like how angry the president of the Federation is, because I think President Rillick realizes that with space travel being possible again, thanks to the dilithium planet, that means that cultures will start to encounter one another again, and that conflicts will arise. So it's really important that the Federation be seen as a larger entity that can settle any conflicts that begin to arise. And if it is known that they lost the prototype for the new spore drive, it's not really that they lost the spore drive, it's that they have lost control of a key piece of technology. So if they can't control that, how can they be trusted to control conflicts when they begin to arise between civilizations that haven't encountered themselves in like 100 years? So yeah, when she was so angry and talking about this, that's what I understood as to be the larger macro issue, that, conflicts are about to come very soon and very quickly. And if you don't have the Federation set, it's like, okay, we're the parent that can settle this, you know, the rediscovery of dilithium is going to lead to a whole lot of problems that didn't exist, if not like open warfare between cultures. So they've got to get this right from the start. And it's not mentioned, and I'm not really sure if the Admiral and if Michael get it, but President Rillick, I think, thinks ahead. And that's really the issue here. It's like, you need from the get-go to show people as they begin to interact with one another again that, you know, there's a parent in charge here. It's not the kids saying like, where are we there yet? I want to go here. I want to go there. No, someone is driving the car. And if they fail to show that they're driving the car from this onset, I mean, this is going to go bad really quickly.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, Rulick is somebody who has got the most an enviable job in the universe. She's trying to pick up all the pieces of the Federation's previous mistakes. And I mean, this is, you know, everything went sideways when the burn happened. The Federation was knocked down several pegs. The Orion Syndicate the Emerald Chain nearly took over and nearly destroyed almost 6 centuries worth of peace and development. So I think that, you know, she's trying to hold this on. She's holding it on by a razor's edge at this point. So we have to, you know, she's like, we have one chance to get this right. If we can't prove to the rest of the universe that we can be trusted again, we're screwed. So
I mean, yeah. You need a larger entity because not all problems can be solved at the poker table.
Exactly. Would be nice if it could be, but, you know, yeah. We can't even talk about the Olympics. So at any rate, so I think we're coming to the end, and we will be back again next weekend for another episode of Discovery and our discussions. So Chris, where can people find you?
Thank you, Josh. People can find me on Instagram at Verde Cosplay. If you are hankering to see some great cosplay, but don't quite yet feel comfortable going to a con, come to my Instagram and you'll see some like great examples of some outstanding cosplay. And I want to wish everyone a upcoming happy Valentine's Day.
And you can find me at Josh Pritchett Jr. on Facebook. My short story collection, Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural, is still available at Amazon and Kindle. And I want to wish all my fellow single people, you know, well, maybe next year. Well, happy Valentine's Day next year. We hold out hope, don't we? So take care, live long and prosper. Kapla. Bye-bye.
Go Patron Bengals!